I didn't think I'd be asking you about this, but does Congress need to have a say in renaming the Kennedy Center? And as a Democrat, would you buy tickets at the Trump Kennedy Center?
Thanks, Joe, for having me on. And I was giggling over here while I listened in on that conversation. Just like the president trying to rename the Department of Defense, the Department of War, this is a similar situation. It requires an act of Congress. And so this is pretty make-believe at the moment. And unfortunately, taxpayer dollars might be used to change the name on the wall. But the truth of the matter is we have a system of checks and balances and shared governing here in Washington, and Congress is going to have to approve that. I would be a no vote. As you mentioned, ticket sales are down. There's kind of ramifications of the president's getting so involved in the Kennedy Center politics. I don't quite understand it when we have so many other issues, serious issues the American people are counting on us to address. Why he's spending so much time on this, it boggles the mind.
Yeah, well, it's just something we thought we'd get your take on, Congresswoman. And we're a little more interested in your take on health care right now because we had a remarkable conversation yesterday with Mike Lawler, the Republican from New York, who signed on to Hakeem Jeffries' discharge petition to extend Obamacare subsidies. He was one of 4 Democrats to do so. Now, I realize Republicans passed their bill last evening. That doesn't touch Obamacare subsidies. Right. And I'm wondering what you think about the next step here. I just asked Congressman Jody Arrington this same question. Is there a deal to be had here, or we're as good as over the cliff?
Listen, I'm an optimist. I wouldn't be in this business if I weren't. I would like to believe that cooler heads can prevail, particularly as upwards of 20 million Americans are set to experience this huge affordability crisis on January 1st because Congress has chosen not to act. House Speaker Johnson has willfully chosen not to negotiate with Democrats to get the votes he would need to pass something actually meaningful and lower the cost of health care insurance for tens of millions of Americans. Maybe we'll get a Christmas miracle. Cooler heads can prevail and we can come together. I'm grateful for Mike and the 3 other Republicans for signing on. I think they saw the light, they heard from their constituents. They're doing something about it. That's what everybody watching at home should expect of their members of Congress. But, do I think the speaker's going to call that up for a vote before we adjourn in, I don't know, maybe an hour? Not likely.
Maybe an hour. Well, yeah, because I guess by the rules, with it being discharged, that would likely put you into the beginning or middle of January when you get back, right? Is this the issue that defines the midterms? Is this what brings Democrats back into power?
I think this is one part of the issue that brings, hopefully the confidence of the American people back to the Democratic Party. It's the affordability crisis broadly. You were just chatting about the impacts as we're going into the holiday season. I spent, my Small Business Saturday a few weeks ago visiting small shops in Annapolis and in Ellicott City in my district and just talking to those business owners about the tariff hits that they took, purchasing a lot of the products they had on shelves for the holiday season pre-tariffs, and then to come to find out that they're going to have to pay, depending on the country, 30% tariffs. They can't afford to eat those costs. They're being passed on to the American people. And that's just one part. We talked about groceries before. We talked about, I just paid my electricity bill and it was staggering. We talk about health insurance, housing, childcare. I hear constantly, the Republicans promised to solve it. The president promised to solve it on day 1 of his presidency. We're almost a year into that with no meaningful impact. At least folks back at home in my district aren't feeling the impact of his actions. And so I think this is a mantle that Democrats are really charged up to lead on over the next year and prove not just that we're against the president or against Republicans, but we're actually for solving this affordability crisis.
Congresswoman, you represent Maryland's 3rd district, which includes all of Annapolis, and of course that means our great Naval Academy. You're also a member of the Armed Services Committee, so I'm sure you're knee-deep in conversations and briefings around what the president's referring to as a naval blockade around Venezuela. There was a closed-door briefing earlier this week, and I'm wondering what questions you have going forward and whether you think this is the march to war in the Caribbean.
It's really unclear. I was in 2 closed-door classified briefings this week, and I left with more questions than answers that I have received from both Secretary Hegseth, Secretary Rubio, and the Navy. 14% of our fleet is now engaged in some type of conflict, undefined conflict. I was with the Secretary Hegseth, when he talked just 2 weeks ago about not entering the American people and our service members into meaningless and endless wars, and yet our goals with Venezuela are completely undefined. And as a member of Congress, member of the Armed Services Committee, that really troubles me. It's keeping me up at night with so many of my constituents, including a lot of folks from the Naval Academy down there right now. At the same time, the American people deserve to have answers. This is, months-long engagement in a part of the world that the president can't define our goals or why we have 14% of our fleet down there in the first place. And as I've said, I can't tell you how many times in my first 11 months in the House, our founders and framers structured the Constitution intentionally putting war powers in Article 1 with the Congress. Unfortunately, we had 2 resolutions yesterday that did not pass to kind of regain some of that control. I hope the American people are equally concerned.
14% is a remarkable number, Congresswoman. I've only got a minute left. The president said yesterday, having framed this about drugs until now, that this is about the oil, he said. Venezuela took our oil illegally and we're going to take it back. Is that what this is about, oil?
I don't know what it's about. I also think that it's a false bill of goods that he's selling to the American people. Listen, I've had family members who have unfortunately lost their lives to fentanyl, but if we were focused on fentanyl, we'd be focused on China and not on Venezuela. What they're taking, what they're sinking are boats carrying cocaine, not boats carrying fentanyl. And at the same time, the president is pardoning literal drug kingpins who have been convicted by juries of actually killing people through the drug trade. So there's a mismatch of messaging here that is also deeply, deeply concerning.